Welcome to the Reawakening Ancient Feminine Wisdom in Pregnancy, Birth, and Motherhood Summit. I'm your host, Nancy Lucina, and today Miré Molnar will be joining us. Miré serves as a doula, spiritual coach, energetic jewelry designer, and sacred pregnancy teacher. She has been attending births since she was a child. Throughout her life, she has supported women in various ways of all ages. When she was initiated into motherhood some years ago, she received exactly the support she needed, feeling vulnerable, yet powerful, and always safe and respected. She believes this kind of support is every woman's birthright, and she believes that understanding the initiation of a woman's journey is part of the consciousness upgrade that is needed as we move through these modern times. In today's conversation, Miré and I discuss how to work with fears during pregnancy and other ways to prepare for labor, how to weave magic into our pregnancy, birth, and postpartum, and so much more.
Hello, everyone. Today we have with us Miré Molnar from shamamarising.com and talismamajewelry.com. Welcome.
Hello. Thanks
Thank
for
you for
having me.
being here. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk to you. I want to jump right into maybe a bit of a heavy topic, but I feel like you're going to have a lot of wisdom to share around it, which is fear. So pregnancy is a time where a lot of fears can get brought up, especially if you're a first-time mother. So I know that part of your work is childbirth education. So I'm wondering if you can share a few tips with women who might be watching about how they can work through those fears before they go into labor, ideally.
Yes. So I kind of attacked this in my own birth from a few different angles. So first you have the fear of the unknowing. You have this, if it's your first time having a baby, you've got this huge cultural conversation about how horrific it all is. There really isn't much conversation in our daily lives that you never see a movie where a woman is like super empowered by her birth. Usually there's almost always sort of like, I'm going to do this naturally. And then it hits the hard part. She's like, drugs, and that's the big joke. And that's the only joke. And that's all we get, is that. So you're kind of and I grew up, my mom was a midwife. And so as a child, I went to births all the time. So for me, natural home birth is super normal. And yet still I had fear. And so I really tried to look at what that fear was all about. And I was able to locate that most of it was the fear of the unknown. I was terrified about this idea of this thing happening to my body, and I had no idea how to wrap my head around it. So first, I would say it's really important to educate yourself on what is happening in your body. If you can understand what's happening in your body, what I realized is when I was actually in my birth and in my labor, I wasn't afraid once I got there. I just met it, because I had been packed with all this knowledge. So I knew exactly what my body was doing at every turn and every moment. So there was nothing to be afraid of. And that I found. So I would first and foremost say, educate yourself, because knowing what your body's doing and knowing what maybe some of the pitfalls are. I mean, there's only so many things that can go wrong, even though we have this conversation like every birth could potentially be an emergency. Most births aren't an emergency. We have the numbers screwed in our heads. And saying bye to my love. And so first off, knowing what's going on in all the different stages of labor and having that sort of, onboard that early so that you're totally knowledgeable by the time you go into labor. So there's no surprises there. The second thing for me was energetically removing some fear. So I actually went to different energy workers and had them release fear Just, my mom had a stillborn. And so there was a lot of fear around the baby not surviving for me.
Right. Okay.
And that's something I inherited. It was like, it wasn't really my fear, but it's a fear that I've always heard that story. And it was in my mom's, cellular structure. And I think that was something that just was given to me, even though she's a total birth advocate and natural childbirth advocate and totally believes in women. I still had a sense of fear around losing my baby. And so going and getting fear released and just the unknown, getting whatever your attachment to fear of the unknown is, was really regardless of where people stand on if that stuff is real or not. I say just go through the practice of having somebody tell you, oh, you're now released of fear. And it just sets a new program in your brain.
Right.
And then you can choose to live off this new program, or you can choose to live off your old program, but you can totally choose to believe that somebody just reset your programming. Why not?
Right.
And the other thing that I thought a lot about fear, and sort of from a spiritual perspective, is the abyss, like this unknowing, stepping off the cliff. I think a lot of us in our lives, almost to do anything magical or to do anything, to do anything that really matters, we have to risk something a little bit, right? Most endeavors that we do, if it's a business or any big project, having a baby, certainly, there's risk involved. And there's a point where you're sitting at the edge of the abyss and it's just total darkness and it's empty. And you have no fucking clue what's on the other side, if you can get to the other side.
Right.
What's going to happen while you're in the middle.
Right.
And it's terrifying. And I think that this is a moment for women when they're pregnant to, start to find a way to get in touch with, where they lie with some sense of faith. Not so much a faith in like a religion per se, but this ability to just trust in the universe.
Right.
And to let go a little bit. I don't think that Westerners are very skilled at this.
Right.
When I visited my friends in Zimbabwe, their daily lives, they have to let go a lot. And so there's a whole different sense of, when you're there, everybody's far more in the moment, and they've actually had to let go and let go. That's a practice that they do all the time.
Yeah.
For various reasons, but a lot of my friends there lose people often because of not having health, any health support, healthcare support in their country. And so there's sort of this, when you're there with them, people are a little different. They have let go of a lot and are really present. And I think with Westerners, we're clingy to the past, to the future. We want to control it.
Yep.
And I really think that that's going to cause women in labor a lot of problems, because this is not something you can totally control. And so you can be educated, you can be informed, you can be empowered, you can step up to the challenge fearlessly, and then you got to let go.
Yeah, exactly.
So I would say,
no, go ahead. I think there's a bit of a delay, so I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, I would just say that to me is sort of the cocktail that you need to kind of cultivate while you're in your pregnancy, is to meditate on those things, be really aware that your issues of control are going to come up, that you might have something from your past, or your DNA might, you might need to clear some things out. Maybe it's in your body. Maybe for some women, there might be sexual abuse that's stopping them. There might be, past times when they needed to let a baby go, past times where, some type of surgery happened. There's all kinds of stuff that we store in our bodies. So any number of things can be coming up for you.
Right.
And looking at fear. And so I support women to look at what all that is, clear it out as best as you can, and then come to your labor with as much information and empowerment as possible. And of course I had I had a huge talisman that I made for the birth. I'll grab it and show you. Yeah, this helped me. It could use a nice, what's it called, a polish. But I had, this was a birth necklace that I made, and I, charged it. It's got this moldavite on it.
Oh, moldavite, that's like the strongest.
Yeah. And all this labradorite, and so I played with stuff like that. So ahead of time, I made this, and I just put all this intention into my birth. So, so this was something that I held and just used.
Yep.
The touch point to remind me of this power that I had infused throughout my pregnancy.
Oh, I love that. You brought up so many amazing points, and I'm totally on the same page with all of it. I love what you said about like clearing the ancestral lines as well. I talk about that too with clients, and how important it is to just like remove all of these imprints that aren't even ours. And as you say, we grow up with these different images in the media. You were really blessed to have grown up with all of those positive imprints for the most part about birth, but most people like can't even bring to mind an empowering image, like you said, they've never seen a birth. A lot of people haven't even seen a woman like breastfeed for real in real life. I mean, it's just crazy. Like, so yeah, I could talk for days about that. But yeah, you brought up so many good points. And the talisman, I love that. And also, we can do blessing ways, like prepare, for that journey into the abyss with our sisters supporting us. And then we can infuse these power objects also with intentions from our sisterhood, right? And then bring that into the birth. I know that's a technique that I also share. But yeah, that piece you pulled out, that was a serious piece.
It's fun when I had all my girlfriends put feathers into my hair. And I had long hair at the time, and I had all my girlfriends say like a wish or a prayer or a kind of a blessing for me, and they put feathers in my hair. So during my labor, I had all these feathers in my hair, and they were all from my girlfriends. So things like that, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I think getting creative with that stuff, and we just make shit up, we just are like, okay, let's have everybody do blah blah blah, and it fuels you with that support that you need.
Yeah.
The last thing that I would say is you're also going to come into contact with your highest self and possibly, well, I don't know if this is true for everybody, but for me, the same person that I've met on really, really heavy duty, deep medicine quests, herbal medicine quests.
Yeah.
I also met her in my birth. And he came through. So I tend to go into this kind of like large cat creature, like, I don't know what type, but it's like a large cat.
Yeah.
And during transition for me, I turned into her, I turned into the goddess, like all this was coming out of me. That could be probably pretty scary for somebody who hasn't explored hallucinogens, or who hasn't gone into deep spiritual work.
Altered states, right? Yeah.
All the time?
Altered states, like who haven't accessed a whole lot of that. Yeah.
Yes. And so that would be another thing to maybe, obviously, if you're pregnant, you can't go looking into altered states so much, but if you can find yourself in meditation or go to a class, I did tantric dance during my pregnancy, and that helped tremendously. So, connecting to your womb source energy, I'd even suggest to women before they get pregnant, if you're doing a conscious conception, to really like check some of these things off your list before you even make the baby, you know, really start to think about your birth way before you're pregnant, you know, because it's all cultivating this really huge, and I think of it as an initiation. And so the whole thing is quite a process. And I felt like I needed to clear space in my life with my personal relationships before I got pregnant. We needed to do things to our bodies to cleanse our bodies. There were all these steps that we took that felt really necessary to bring this baby to us. And so I almost feel like some of the fear, you know, if you're a person who knows you want to have a baby, you know, start looking at some of these things that we brought up before you even get pregnant, and start kind of picking away at, you know, this crust of fear, and this crust of not trusting yourself, and this crust of and unworthiness, and not being empowered. There's a lot of personal work, I think, that has to come before you can get into the really deep work of being free of that fear.
I totally agree. Yes, I absolutely resonate with everything you've said. And I loved the cat thing that you were describing. I actually was just at a birth, my best friend's, and she told me, like, I'm turning into a lioness right now. And I was like, yeah. And for me, I was super young when I gave birth. I mean, I was 24. That felt young for me. It was all like, I didn't have all of the knowledge and wisdom that I have now. Let's just put it like that. And there was a point in my labor when literally the paintings began to melt, like full on psychedelic trip, you know? And I was just like, whoa. And that's when I reached that point where I said, I don't think I can do this, right? Which is often transition, which is often, you know, what so many women say, even if they're feeling empowered about their birth and everything. And then we have to take that jump into the abyss. And I think a lot of that, I can't do this anymore, isn't necessarily even about the pain, but about that like altered state that you're talking about. And if it feels really foreign to you, it can feel like completely losing control, which it kind of is, because it's requiring such a deep surrender. And I love that you brought up like meeting those parts of yourself and meeting what you call the goddess, because I think I've heard that story so many different times, even from women who don't necessarily go in with like a spiritual perspective on birth. Then suddenly they're like, I heard my ancestors talking to me, or like I felt all the women who've ever given birth birthing with me. You know, they have these very...
I felt that one too. That one's amazing. I felt so connected to all women. I mean, honestly, the reason that I'm doing Shamama Rising, I've always known because of my mom, I have this lineage of just knowing all this information, but I hadn't ever really figured out a way to make it my life's work. When I was in labor, I felt so connected to all women everywhere giving birth, and I felt so supported and so empowered, and it was so critical to me that all women everywhere have this experience. So that's really my deepest, you know, the work that I want to do is give all women access to be this empowered, because my birth team listened to me. No one told me what to do. I was telling them where I was at, and everybody just supported me. And it couldn't have been a more awesome experience.
Oh, that's beautiful. I got the chills when you were saying that. So I wanted to talk to you about... Sorry, go ahead.
We can just chat, I feel like, for so long. So I'll let you continue.
It's okay if you want to. I mean, whatever. Like, I want I want it to all flow organically. I have a couple of questions for you, but you know, if you have something else to say, go for it.
I just think that the power of women grasping that we're all connected through the blood mysteries. You know, this is this unique thing that we share as Psi women. And I think that what's happening right now in the world is it's really showing up that it's time for us to acknowledge this and come out of hiding. many of us have experiences that we were burnt at the stake in past lives.
Right.
There's a deep fear to not share. It's been 5,000 years, 4,000 years or so of really condemning anybody who like loves the goddess or loves the earth or is connected in these ways that seem mystical or magical, when really it's just our birthright, and really we have all of this inside of us. And if you do a little bit of yoga, you find that out. It's like there's nothing, you don't even have to you don't have to wear a robe, you don't have to, there's no eye of Nu, you don't have to do any of that stuff. I mean, sometimes it's fun to pretend. I don't know, like I love being all Buffy and Vampire Slayer about things because that's just fun for me. But it really is nothing to do with any of that. Like we just have the ability in our own bodies.
Innate. Yeah.
To have these higher vibrations, to get up into our third eye, to have these amazing, I mean, I've just done yoga for a full day at times in my past and became so high from the experience. And all that is breathing, moving. That's it.
Right.
So it's in our bodies. And I think with women and birthing and all of the things that make us women and make us different because of being a woman, it's really imperative that we step out of the shadows, talk. This is why I love that we're doing this right now. And I see so many people are starting to have these summits and get women together and talk about these things and acknowledge the mystery of life, the miraculousness of it. And if we put as much attention on honoring women as the gatekeepers to the other side, and our magical experience of being women, we have initiations continuously throughout our lives to change, transform.
Exactly.
100% we transform. I mean, you go from your first blood, from being a child to your first blood, this heavy amount of responsibility now is put upon you. And, our society did not hold that in a way that made me feel empowered,
Right.
Yeah.
It's like shove a tampon in, go back to school. It's just another day. Yeah, I know.
And you feel ashamed about it. Like beyond just not supporting it, you're torn down about it. I felt hate for my body for years. I was so ashamed of bleeding. I was so ashamed of my sexuality. I had no realm to I had no way to process any of the things that were going on in me. And I just kind of pushed it all aside until I was older and could, finally outside of high school, look at it,
Yeah.
And so there's all these things, and motherhood is similar. It's such a huge initiation. You completely transform, cellularly, you are not the same person.
Yeah.
All these different DNA triggers have happened. All this bounce back bullshit. I'm so fucking sick of hearing about it. You're not bounce back anywhere. You are fucking flying forward through bouncing back. You're gonna have a new belly that you're gonna hold and own with pride. Your boobs are gonna sag. You're a fucking woman now. You're a mother. You're a whole other being. So sick of bounce back.
I know, right? Oh, I know.
and so I just feel like as mothers, especially when we have this huge initiation of birth, we can start to realize that we're all connected. It's this one major way that we can cross cultural, country, religious, spiritual, color, anything, you name it. Women can connect, a mother can connect to another mother in a way that's so profound. It's like this way to link the planet together. And so so all this attention on the war gods and honoring, war, victims of, or not victims of war, but people who fought in wars, and just honoring the war story, the hero's journey. It's it's so much of our culture can focus on that. And yet there are no stories of women who, are heroines going to, the birth that is one of the most extreme initiations that a human can have.
Yep.
And you don't get the hero's journey stories. We have no media that talks about it. we don't have memorials that celebrate all the women who died in childbirth. We just don't honor the females. We just don't honor women at all. It's just kind of been erased, or you're just going to have to shh, that's all gross.
Yeah.
And that's really what you get is breastfeeding's gross. Birth is gross. I don't want to hear about it. Your vagina's gross. Pussy's gross. All of it's gross until I want to fuck it and then shut up. I mean, that's all we get. Right. So again, going back, I just went on a huge diatribe, but again, going back to the feeling when you labor and you do connect with all women everywhere around the globe from all time in history who've ever done this. You think about the woman who did this in a cave. You think about the women who are doing this right now somewhere where no one's helping them. Right. You think about their braveness and just, I get chills thinking about these people. Me too. Who don't have any support. Right. Who are still going to the abyss, trusting their bodies, and then coming out with this amazing baby. And we can all unify around this shared experience. And I think that there's something really powerful in that. And it's important right now in this day and age for us to remember that we have that connection. I think it's going to be important as things start to move into this either new earth, something where we cultivate something more awesome that actually is sustainable. Right. And fight against this movement to just destroy ourselves. Yep. Oh yeah, absolutely. I love your passion and your fierceness. And I just think it's so important to have this conversation. And I hope that whoever's listening is really able to feel like they're kind of infused with that power, because there is such an enormous shift happening. I talk a lot about, I refer to it as the inner goddess. So making contact with that inner power, like what you were talking about a little bit at the beginning of that share, just this innate knowing that is already inside. So actually so much of the journey into motherhood, I think, is peeling off layers rather than stuffing yourself with more knowledge or statistics or whatever. It's just I'm going to just take off shame. I'm going to take off guilt. I'm going to take off worry. I'm going to take off doubt. I'm going to take off, and then you're like, whoa, something super powerful is lying underneath there for me to not just make contact with, but become, and then allow your life to be led from that place, and that for me really is the shift of consciousness that's happening on this planet. And I think that the feminine does have a massive role in that, because she is teaching the art of deep surrender to something higher, something with a higher intelligence. And even if you don't want to say the word God or whatever, you can look out in nature and see a natural and higher intelligence that's just working. It works, there's cycles and there's seasons and it works, and you don't have to really interfere. And so it can be, the same when observing us for the most part. So much goodness here. I just said so much goodness here. Absolutely. I just spoke with a woman named Destiny Faye, who's this extraordinary young woman who is just a powerhouse, working on New Earth, New You Now movement. And she said something last night to me that is just like what you just said. And, she said something to the effect that if you look at nature, it's built, it's not built to spill, it's built to thrive. And if you just let nature unfold, there is this intelligence that shows itself. And we are just getting in the way of our own intelligence. And I was telling her, I was like, when you look at a child, as an adult, my whole life, I was always like, humans suck, man. And then I had a baby and I was like, oh my God, humans are extraordinary. We're extraordinary. And, that's beautiful. I think just allowing for just what you said, the intelligence to show itself, because it's in there, it's totally in our DNA. And I think that we have so many blockers, defense mechanisms to just not be with ourselves, and just kind of getting that shedding and having some space, and really, you know, any type of yoga or meditation is so helpful for things like that. And I know so many people are like, oh, meditation is so hard, but it's really easy if you've done something like Bikram yoga. Like, you can't help but not think about anything but your body, because it's so sweaty and hot. So, you know, find, if it's a runner's high, something, just get yourself doing something, needlework even, you know, needlepoint work, just something where your mind can just go into the static place for a little while, and just space.
Absolutely.
And that's where a lot of magic can occur.
I know, I agree, because it's really so much the mind that gets in the way. Like, that's really what I think you have to begin to work with women too in birth, because the body already knows, but it's just getting that place to kind of like drop the mind down. Like, I even do a practice where I imagine, you know, the meditation where you can imagine that roots are coming down, like from your womb space or from your yoni, and like grounding into the core of the earth. I do that with my brain. Like, I just like drop a grounding cord from my mind sometimes. It's just like, you know, like, oh my God, just ground.
Oh, that's a good one.
Getting back into the body, you know, getting women back into the body where that natural, intelligence is so important. The time went by so fast. I'm going to ask you, I'm curious about this, because I read in your syllabus for your childbirth education class that you have something called the mountain. So do you want to tell us briefly about what the mountain is? If you haven't, maybe you've already mentioned it somehow in your share or similar, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes into what we were saying before. You know, we have in our culture, people talk about, you know, athletes. You often hear athletes, and they're sort of in this hero kind of space, but you hear them talk about what it took them to do this really hard thing, you know? And it's like the thing that Nike commercials are made of.
Yeah.
It's like, it's hard, but I kept trying and I did it, you know?
Yeah.
And so I urge women to think of their birth not just as some mundane, like, thing that's getting in the way between them and their baby. It's like, you know, the mountain is your epic journey.
Yeah.
And it is your, it is truly a hero's journey. And, you know, like we said, going through the abyss, coming out the other side, allowing that surrender. The surrender is huge. The connection then to your baby, once you've hit that mountain, all of those hormones are dropping in. The reason you get so like, woo, you know, during transition is you've got all these new chemicals on board that are totally getting you high.
Yeah.
And the oxytocin that's pulling up your uterus is also the same thing. Both you and the baby are just going to be pumped with this oxytocin. So the minute you actually birth that baby, the bonding just is like, you know?
Yeah.
And so if you tinker with any of these stages, you know, you kind of upset this natural flow of, you know, everything is these built-in triggers. And one thing, and just like the flower, like, how does the flower know that when the sun comes out to start to open up its petals? Well, there's triggers in its DNA, and it doesn't have to be told. And like you said, it doesn't necessarily need to read more books on it.
Right.
It just needs to surrender and let go to the sun, and it just happens, you know? And so I feel that I tend to talk about the ordeal of birth is the magic of the birth. And I like to extend that to any type of ordeal. I've had friends who, for various reasons, have had to have C-sections. And so how do you infuse a C-section with magic? Well, that is an ordeal also. And it's this adventure. It's this huge, scary, wild, wonderful adventure where you're going to be, you are going to be challenged at your core, spiritually, mentally, physically.
Right.
And just like if you were going to climb, you know, the Himalayas, would you go to the, you know, bottom of the Himalayas with no preparation?
Right.
You know, after sitting on your couch for like 6 months, not doing any exercise? Hell no.
Right.
You would prepare, you would train, You would understand physically what it was going to take. You would figure out, how much food you could get by on not eating, all these different things to prepare yourself for this amazing challenge that at the end, when you're at the top of that mountain, you're going to be looking out and it's nothing. Nobody could replace that. No matter how much money you have, you couldn't pay for that experience. The only way to experience is to do it, to go through it. And so that's the mountain. It's you being at that mountain peak, experiencing the bliss, the extraordinary, amazing feeling of coming out the other side of something that was hard. And really the only way to get to that experience. And if you miss those things in life, there is a sense of, that awe and wonder and magic. Maybe you're not touching that so much if you're always deflecting the opportunity. Right. And so, the mountain is that, just all of that, just meeting those challenges, coming out the other side, and just enjoying them.
Yeah, that's beautiful. And I love that you mentioned the cesarean as well, because I really wanted to bring that up at some point in one of these interviews. Like, well, what about the woman who has prepared and has, really is in touch with her inner power and goes into birth, and for whatever reason she ends up in a cesarean? Then she can often feel like maybe she failed or something. So like, how do we infuse magic into experiences like that? And I think that can be one of the hardest things. It can be quite devastating for a woman, but I think for me, like, what can really help is just staying connected to that inner power during that experience and knowing, like, this is my initiation too. Every birth is an initiation, as you said. It's such a unique journey for each woman. It really, truly is. So I hope anybody who's watching who has had an experience like that can feel that they're able to still access that magic and, like, feeling proud of themselves for taking that journey. Like, they still are standing on top of the mountain, after having gone through a cesarean or whatever kind of interventions that may have needed to happen. So yeah, I think that's a really important discussion as well. And that's the thing, right? Birth is so mysterious. Like, no matter how we prepare, and it's the abyss. So you don't know what happens in there until you've done it, right?
Yeah, some women might be thinking, it's kind of like, if you can look at the whole thing as a spiritual journey, the letting go for you might be that you don't get the perfectly planned home birth that you thought you had planned out so perfectly. Sometimes that is sort of the control that you need to let go of. Like, maybe birth wasn't enough of a surrender in its own. Maybe you needed to be, bedridden for X amount of time to have people nurture you. I mean, sometimes there's just gifts inside of the process. That if you allow yourself to feel these gifts, you can go, okay, this was really hard, but what it showed me is that my community stepped up, and I thought I had to do everything by myself. And look at this, all these people came to my assistance and nurtured me. And I got to receive for the first time in my life, that could be the journey that you need to go through. And one way that we worked with a friend of ours who they knew they had to have a C-section ahead of time. I can never say the word. It's like the placenta's over the
placenta
cervix.
previa, right? Yeah.
Yes. And so we did all these meditations around fear with that, and we completely, we created a lush talisman of power for her, and we infused it with, think of the stone or touch the stone. And the minute you walk through the hospital doors, everybody in that hospital is there to magically serve you. Like, everyone is their best. The best of the best are there that day. They're all there to help you have the easiest transition. Like, they're all there to serve you. The lighting isn't going to feel funky. Today it's going to feel beautiful. Like, you just you go and shift all of it, and then you activate it. So it's like, so the minute you go through the hospital doors, that's when it's all going to engage, and it's all like, this whole thing is going to unfold. And playing with different ways where you can shift what might have been really scary for you to something that you're almost anticipating with this power, you know, it's a fun way to just change it up a little bit and bring it back to your extraordinary experience. And this ordeal of fear is part of it. And if you don't have a little fear, a little bit of risk, then it doesn't have the same amount of juice to it. So it just enjoy that, you know? And all birth it's always going to be.
Wow, that is so powerful. Well, that we can transition into you telling us all about your offerings, whatever they may be, particularly online as well. I know you do the jewelry and you have an education class around childbirth. So whatever you want to share with our listeners right now, go for it.
Yeah, everything can be found at shamamarising.com, which is SHA Mama, MAMA, Rising, RISING.com. And that is going to be a hub for many, many things going forward. But right now, what we're offering, I work with all of my offerings are things that I have figured out to work with my parents on. And so my father is this amazing craftsman. He's a lapidary genius. He is a master craftsman. He's been doing lapidary jewelry for 30 some odd years. He's been an artist his whole life. He's just extraordinary. Wow. And so he and I have now partnered, and he's teaching me, you know, his craft. He's in his early 70s and he wants to share with me what he knows. And so together we make one of our lines is goddess tags, which is like what I'm wearing, which, you know, this one actually has breast milk in it. Just a little bit of breast milk in the rainbow obsidian. And we also, you know, he has these gorgeous crystal rings that just bore a hole into crystals. And so we charge the stones with energy. And the goddess tags, I like to wear different ones on different days. They have, you know, different little, you know, intentions that you can stamp on there. So when I'm feeling like I need support in this or that, I'll switch them out. And then we do the Lush Talisman of Power. And the Lush Talisman of Power is something that is designed specifically for an ordeal that you're going through or an initiation. And so we intuitively design it based on several meditations, deep meditations that I have with you. And then the design sort of starts to comes to me. And then I bring that design to my dad and we create it. And this could be, you know, I've done small versions of it that are, you know, in the $200 range, and we've done huge ones that are like $9,000. Like you can really they can be big or small. It's, so imagine having a birth talisman like the one that I showed you that was crafted out of your own needs based on your meditations, and the stones are intuitively called, you know, they come to me like, oh, this is the stone that would support this. And so, you know, that's something that we can offer to birthing, you know, or pregnant moms. And then the other thing that we offer is childbirth education classes. My mom is the producer of the Milky Way movie, which is an extraordinary movie it's about breastfeeding in America, but it's also about so much more. It's really, really rich and helps women not just talk about feeding, but talk about trusting their bodies, trusting their babies, trusting themselves. And it's really more, I would say it's more of a movie about supporting mothers, bottom line, anything else. And we go to Sweden and we go to Germany and check out these different models that are working so well, seeing babies in Berlin who are 3 pounds going home from the nurseries, fully breastfeeding and stabilized. Like that just doesn't even happen.
Right.
They're doing kangaroo care, and, you know, skin to skin is an important thing that they value at this hospital, and putting the parents in the same bed with the baby and giving them some time to just like have those natural things that we were talking about, just have their DNA just start to do its thing. Just let them be.
Yep.
So that's what that movie is about. My mom's extraordinary. She was a midwife and nurse. And so she and I are offering, we'll do it via Skype or Zoom. Soon we'll have an electronic version of it. But now we'll do it in person or remotely, a childbirth education class that's really robust and talks about not just the details and all the education that you need to know about your body, but some of the stuff that we've talked about, some of the spiritual stuff and different techniques and whatnot. So yeah, that can all be found at shamamarising.com.
Beautiful. Thank you. Yeah. I only have one last question, a short one. So if you could sum up a piece of advice in just like a few sentences for either moms to be or new moms that you wish you would have known before you had a baby, what would it be? One little nugget. And you maybe already said it, but.
Well, this one's kind of silly and funny, but I was so scared of the baby coming out of my yoni. Like, that's the part that freaked me out.
Okay.
That wasn't like the whole idea when people say ring of fire, that sounded so horrific to me. And I thought also that there was going to be pain as the baby came through the cervix, because I was trying to relate the experience to bleeding.
Okay.
And that was something that was like a total, oh, that's not where it hurts really at all.
Okay.
Like
okay.
So, kind of just a funny thing that came to mind. Like, sometimes it's the advice would be sometimes the things that you think are going to be the scary things are really not. And
right.
Completely shocks you. For me, the immense intensity, I called it like a tsunami pushing a train through my body.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I have never felt so much power in my life running through my body. And that was the big, like, what the shit? You know?
Right. Yeah.
My cervix, there was no pain there. The ring of fire that was great. That felt good, you know?
I know. I also enjoyed that part, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool.
So, just a funny little anecdote.
I love that. Thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much for joining us. This was such an amazingly rich conversation. I could talk to you for hours on end, but we will say goodbye for now. And thank you again. I wish you a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you so much. And thank you for being you and teaching women to birth like a goddess. I love what you're up to.
Oh, thank you. Bye for now.